So the non-lease amount was a topic that was inquired upon by quite a few of our users and clients in the last month. So we thought it would be good to have a session dedicated to ways of recognizing, processing the non-lease amounts in Nakisa. And after we go through the information that we put here in the slides, we're gonna switch to the application and show you in real life how you can account and recognize such amounts. First of all, what are the lease amounts? So you all know in your lease contract you have certain amounts that are not related to the lease of an asset, but they do pertain to that specific contract, and you can have either some sort of service components or some different payments that do not fall into the category of lease payments, and we call them, and even the standards IFRS 16 and ASC 842, they do refer to them as the non-lease payments. And some examples include maintenance, cleaning, utility. Of course, you can have property taxes, for example, legal fees, or any other type of payments or services that you cover that are not into the umbrella of lease payments. And why is that important? Because all the lease payments, again, following the guidance from the standard, they will be included in the present value calculation. So you will have this in the liability calculation. But these amounts are not. They need to be excluded. They need to be recognized differently. So for that purpose, in Nakisa, you have different features, different possibilities of recognizing that. Now, there are some things to be mentioned about the frequency in which you actually pay or apply these fees. You can have them at the same frequency as your lease payments. So let's say you have monthly lease payments, and maybe you have also utility monthly payments or insurance monthly payments. But at the same time, you can have such type of amounts and payments on a one-time basis or an ad hoc basis. They come from time to time. They do not follow the same frequency as your lease payments. So for that, there are different ways of entering these amounts, and you can enter them from the inception if you know about them, but you can also enter them through events. And if they're more infrequent, if they're coming as non-recurring type of charges, you can make use of the charges functionality in Nakisa. So in terms of the type of terms that Nakisa offers, you all know, and you've been using in the portfolio of terms and condition, prepaid, initial direct cost, cash incentive, and then the non-lease amounts and the charges. All they have in common is that they're not included in the liability. Sorry, in the liability calculation, and they're represented in a different way. In other sessions, we talked largely about the prepaid, the initial direct cost, cash incentive. We had several sessions on the three topics. So today we're going to concentrate on the lease amount and charges. So let's talk about non-lease. I'm very sorry I can't see you, but if you have your hand up or you have comments, my colleagues will let me know. So please interrupt me if you have any questions. All right, non-lease amounts. So first of all, some prerequisites in terms of non-lease amount. They are master data details that need to be filled in, and some of these decisions, they need to be taken into consideration from the onboarding, the project phase, and even later, if you decide to start recognizing the non-lease amount, you need to take a moment, you need to talk to your functional administrator and make sure that in terms of configuration, you have everything that is needed. So you need to decide if you if you have all the GL accounts, if you have all the mapping, if you have all the codes. So there are several tables that you need to consider for this. They all have the non-lease in front of them, so you will be able to recognize them easily. So for the functional administrator, we do have details in our admin guide. We do have training materials as well in our portal and our YouTube channel, so you can go there and check. But very briefly and in a summarized form, you will need to make sure that you have the non-lease accounting determination filled in, that you have the necessary GL accounts, and you have the non-lease categories defined at the application level. And I'm going to show you as we switch to the application, I'm going to show you where those tables are. So if it's something that you're introducing now, make sure that you start with that. As always, start with your QA environment, do the test there, and when you're satisfied with the results, you can move to production. Now, on the non-lease amounts, how to enter them. And I'm sure that many of you know these particular fields where they are, and maybe you haven't used them before or used them in a very infrequent way. So here's a chance to kind of refresh on that, on those knowledges, and see maybe you have some questions or you have some clarification to do. So based on the term introduction window, in the standard term, we have the non-lease amounts. And you can introduce non-lease amounts with every standard term. So whether where you are entering a base rent, an extension, a supplemental, or reduction, you can enter them. Here they will be very tied to the lease amounts because they will follow the same amount frequency, the same payment frequency, and of course the dates of payment. So it will be exactly in the same cadence as the lease amount. And in addition to the standard term, you can enter non-lease amounts even to lease end terms, to determination option and purchase option. For the other terms, those are specifically non-lease, and we talked about them at the very beginning, and we do have separate session on them, the prepaid, the cash incentive, the initial direct cost. Right? Now, once you enter the term, you know we have an additional section that it's opening up because you will need to determine whether you are recognizing this with a specific absolute amount or you apply some percentage distribution, independent of which the system has validation in place. And as long as you are filling into 100%, if you choose percentage or you're covering the whole absolute amount, the system will give you the green line once everything is in order. Once you've done that, you can move ahead and enter your additional term or anything else that you need for that specific contract, and of course, move on with the approval process. This, of course, is at the individual level user interface type of option, but we do have a mass option as well. And in the template, in the financial term and the non-lease amount distribution, the two tabs where you need to enter the non-lease amount, you have the option of entering this for your contracts, and you can do that for as many terms as you need to. And of course, you might remember the limit for a contract upload template is 1,000 contracts. You can have more in the financial terms, so you can go to a couple of thousand, 10,000 if you need to, and make sure that you add the non-lease amounts as well for the specific financial term. Again, here we're talking about those amounts that can go hand in hand with the lease amount, so they will be attached to a specific financial term, each of them. Very important that you follow, and you can see here it's basically mimicking, replicating what we do in the user interface. It's very important that the non-lease amounts are linked to a specific financial term. So the ID that was created in the financial term is reported here, so it can be further populated with the necessary amounts for the non-lease. So the two options, either individual or upload, will give you the exact same result, but of course through the upload you can do various contracts at a time, while at individual level you of course go in that sequence one by one. Once you have approved everything, if you want to visualize the non-lease amounts, you will find them in the schedules. There is a specific section, the non-lease payments. So this is where you can see them. So you can have them under the standard term. You can see them here. You can have additional terms, standard term too. So you can enter them through supplemental if you want to. And then you recognize the other columns. Of course, we can have non-lease payments related to indexation for US GAAP. So there is a specific column for that. The incentive, the listen that we were talking earlier. And of course, we have a total for this section as well. Once you approve the contracts, you will be able to visualize the transaction and post the transaction. And here's an example. We will go more into details about that. The last section about the non-lease is related to the reporting. Before that, we're going to talk about charges. But at this point, I'm going to switch to the application so we can go through an example directly in the user interface. And I'm going to take the opportunity to stop for a couple of seconds and see if there are any questions.
No questions in the chat.
All right. So we are just curious and wondering if any of you are already using non-lease amounts. How do you use them? So feel free to maybe give us your feedback and let us know how you use them. Go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, I've had some struggles trying to get prepaid rent into my agreement. So say you have, your first month rent and your last month rent is due upfront, and essentially that goes and sits in a deposit account. And I just had trouble trying to do that with the dates in particular, because it would not let me apply dates at the end of the contract. So I'm just wondering what the proper way to do that is and how that affects the initial valuation of the agreement.
So the prepaid term is only available at contract inception, but from what you're describing, if this is it has the nature of a deposit and you are receiving it back. I don't know exactly, and maybe I don't. Maybe you can give me more details here, but this type of deposit should not be considered with the lease contract. So you can either maybe recognize them as charges, and we're gonna go through them. But of course, because the prepayment it's the nature of the payment, it allows you to depreciate the value with the value of the right of use asset through the term of the contract. But if you are receiving the money back, then you shouldn't be including them at all.
Okay, so those rent, it's applied against your last month's rent. So like you make the payment up front, it's applied against the, end of the term. So you just wouldn't put that into the contract details at all? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I would consider them, but the question here is because this is more the timing of the payment, and what we are talking here is about whether you need to consider them in the liability or not. And if you are making this payment, you no longer have the liability. Or if you are receiving them back, then again, like it's not the type of element that you should consider for the lease contract. So
So would you decrease the number of months that your term is in? Like if you're paying up front, you have a 60-month term when you set up the contract, because you can only put the prepaid at the inception date, would you reduce that to a 59-month term then to recognize the
well,
liability?
not necessarily, because the term will be for the right of use asset. You can simply have no payment in the last month. That if that is the nature. So my point here is that what you need to determine is, well, these payments were made and it's the payment for my first and my last, meaning that once the contract starts, those payments you no longer make them, they're not part of the liability. This is where you will need to make the distinction and consider if they're still part of the liability or not.
Okay, I'll just continue to watch your example and see if it fits together for
But
me better.
for
Thank you.
for the purpose of this session, we weren't necessarily talking about prepayments. We do have other session that we that we discuss this topic as well. And if you can provide some specific details and let us know, well, what happens with those, because you mentioned deposit and you mentioned it's for the first and the last month. What happens? Like, are you actually making another payment at the end of the month, or no, it's just something that you pay up front? And then my colleagues here will be able to follow up with you. But for this session, we were specifically talking about other type of non-lease other than prepayment, initial direct cost, and cash incentive. And I hope everybody can see my screen. I switched to the application. I have here a contract in initial phase. We are entering the terms at inception. So I'm starting with the standard term, and I'm starting with the base rent. And this is my amount per unit. And at the same time, I will enter an amount for non-lease. And this is the total that I'm paying. And I'm going to consider several type of expenses, utilities, and maintenance, and so on. So you can see here already the system is calculating the total. This is what I'm going to pay, the sum of lease and non-lease amounts. I'm moving forward with the amount frequency, and I'm paying once a month. And then let's move to the start of the terms and condition. I imagine this contract is starting at the beginning of this year, and it is a 3-year contract. So in this situation, my non-lease amounts are following the same sequence as the lease amounts. And you can see right now, I still haven't finished with the mandatory fields. And you can always make use of this little red line here. The system will point out to what exactly you need to continue or what exactly is not going well. So I need to continue with the non-lease amount distribution. And the first stop is the portion where whether I'm using amount or percentages. And this, of course, it's based on the contract details, on exactly what you have in there. I do imagine that amount is more frequent, but percentages can be something that you can use, especially as you have only one particular non-lease amount. So let's go with amount first. So I have insurances. Once you click on the pencil, you can put the actual amount in here and continue with the rest. I have maintenances, and you see, like right now I have 400. The system is going to tell you that you only distributed 400. Your total amount is 600. Go ahead, Timothy.
Just a quick question. On the first payment date, January 1st, 2024, I would expect that the last payment date would also be on the first of the last period. I just want someone to explain and reemphasize the last payment date and its significance in that field.
And thank you so much. So yes, the last payment date is a cutoff date. It's not an actual payment date, what you see here. The significance of this field and what it means is basically saying after this date, I no longer have payments for this term. However, the cadence, the frequency is dictated by the payment frequency and the date. So these two fields are the ones that giving the cadence in the list of payments. And yes, my last payment is going to be on the 1st of December. But for simplicity and also because you are using more mass operation and you want to make use of what the system is suggesting, what we recommend is that you use the last payment date the same as the terms and condition end date, unless you specifically have a payment after the end of your terms and condition.
Thank you for that. Yes, thank you very much. That was my understanding. I just want to double check and confirmation for the whole group here. Thank you.
Perfect. You're very welcome. All right, so let's add some cleaning in here. 100, and I'm down to another 100 that I am going to allocate to parking. So with that, I have my green line for this term, so I can click submit. I can, of course, add something through supplemental, and I don't need to put the supplemental being an overlapping term. I can simply add non-lease. So for example, I'm putting a supplemental, and let's say I want to have, and this can be done through events as well. I'm not going to add anything in the non-lease amount, but I want to add something in the non-lease amount. I'm going to go with the same payment frequency and amount frequency, and I'm going to say, well, you know what? As of 1st of July, or maybe let's put it earlier so we can see it easier in our schedule, I'm going to have 12 months of a specific non-lease amount. The payment date needs to overlap with my base rent, so I can have it here. What I need to define is, of course, the portion. And this time around, I'm going for percentages. And let's say I have utilities. And I'm going to put 100 here. I'm allocating everything to this. I have my green line, so I can submit. Let's say I have a specific non-lease amount that I need to pay at the end of my contract. I can go with the termination option from the beginning. I'm not trying to make a very realistic example here. Just want to show you all the possibilities that you have. I'm adding a termination option. You can see a lot of the fields are grayed out. I don't need to enter a lot of things in here. And I put a 4,000. I don't know. I have something to pay at the end of the contract that it's not part of my lease obligation. I can put it under other and give it 100%. All right. And really quickly, I'm going to add for Michelle a prepayment. So the prepayment is only available at inception. I can enter, and you can see here the only available field is my non-lease amount. And I can enter here the 5,000, the amount that was already paid. And the understanding is that this is already settled and it's not part of the liability. So given that, I do have my first payment here. One of the things that, Michelle, you can do, you can add a free rent for the first payment and for the second payment, considering that this prepayment is for the first and the last month. So this will be, so let me put 9,000 here as a prepayment is equal to 2 of my payments. And one option will be entering some free rent, and I need to add the incentive, free rent, one time monthly. First is my first month. Nothing more I need to enter here. And I am going to enter another one for my last month. And my last month was December 2026. I only need to give it the payment date because the concept, the nature of this term is pretty much telling the system, hey, skip this payment on this particular date. But of course, the recommendation here, Michelle, is to really have all the details and the understanding. What do I need to enter in my list of payments and what is part of my obligation? The system can support many, many scenarios. The important part is that you get what you need. Now we enter all the terms and condition, and of course this can be done through a template as well. I just wanted to show you all the details at the user interface, and in the template you just need to make sure that you enter the exact same thing with the details that you need for the template. And now in the terms and condition, I am going to select all the optional, the likely to exercise one, because I want to see them in the schedules. And with that, we can click on view schedules. I'm going to select all columns and all years so we can look at all the details. And as I was saying earlier, the section to look for is the non-lease amount payments, and I went too far. And here is our non-lease payment section. Let me make it a bit more central. So we have the standard lease term, the one that we entered with the base rent. Then we had a supplemental that we entered just for the non-lease, and we can see it here. It was starting in April, and we had it for 12 months. Then with the termination, we have a non-lease amount that is entered to the termination option. And we can also see the prepayment that I entered here, the 9,000. Now on the free rent, we can switch back to the lease payment, and we can see how the free rent is nulling out our payment. We can see we have 0 here. And if I scroll down to my last period, I can also see 0. So Michelle, to your question, this is one of the options. This will give you, it will pull out the actual payments from the calculation of the obligation, while you have the prepayment that will allow you to depreciate this amount over the life of the contract, over the life of the right of use asset. Of course, one thing to consider here, if it's something that you pay back, you should not consider it at all with the lease contract. So we have the prepayment here, which is only increasing the value of the asset, and we can see that the depreciation is made over the entire life of the term. All right. So this is the schedule. Any questions so far? Any other points that you want to clarify or ask about? All right. I'm going to move back to an example or contract that I already approved, so we can take a look at the transactions. So this is an already active contract. And if I'm going to see the postings, you're going to notice that in the payment, I have the non-lease accrual. So when I'm doing my payment, I'm also paying the non-lease amount. And in the accrual, I'm going to have the itemization based on the type of non-lease expenses that I have considered, and of course, based on the mapping that I have that I have in the master data. So these are the two places where you will see the non-lease amounts. Then, of course, with the non-lease amounts, you can see this in the consolidated transaction report along with the normal transaction. As they're part of the terms, you can consult them in data quality integrity report. And you can of course see them in, we have a specific disclosure report to the non-lease amount. Before getting into and showing you a few more reports, I would like to talk about charges. So this is one way of entering the non-lease amount that is following the exact frequency of the standard term, something like a base rent and extension, but also supplemental reduction. And I showed you even with the lease end terms. You can, of course, add more supplemental. You can do an event if, for example, at the beginning of the contract, you had no information of those non-lease amounts. You can do an event, enter a supplemental, as I showed you, with only the non-lease amounts. But for those charges that don't have a frequent cadence, you do have the option to enter them as charges. And for charges, we can go at the activation group level. On your left hand, you have the charge list here, and I already prepared some charges in this particular activation group. But if it were a brand new contract, and you can add the charges at inception before the contract is actually activated, but you can enter the charges after the contract is activated as well. So you don't necessarily need to do an event. How do you add those charges? From the context menu, the three dots, you click, no, I'm sorry, I have the add charges here. You can upload them through there. So you can click on the add charges. You will have pretty much the same information as we've seen before. So you can give a name to these charges, and let's say I have an alarm fee that I need to pay in October. I am going to put a due date, and the due date can be anything. These are just gives you the possibility to have the list of charges next to the contract. You can consult them, but they're not dependent in any shape or form to the frequency or the payment dates of the actual contract. One thing, you won't be able to enter charges after the end of the contract. So you still need to enter them at any date within the life of the contract. So August 2024, I can enter August if I want to. I need to select the unit. So depending on how many units you have, you can make the allocation for the unit. Of course, I will have to select the charge type, and this is similar to what we've seen related to the ones that are frequent. So I was saying alarm, so I can choose something like services. I can put an amount here and add a description if I want to. Again, this is of course for your records. One-time fee for alarm, for example. And once I'm done, I can click on submit. And I will have my additional charge here. Now, at this point, I can still delete it if I want to. And I'm deleting another one. I can edit. And of course, you have the option to upload new charges. And you can upload as many as you want, as frequent as you want. And you can do it at individual level, but you can do it for several activation group at a time. From the import-export activation, we have import charges, export charges. As you click on the import charges, you have the option to download the template, and you can use it to fill in all the information that you have there. The important information is related to the ID, the unit, the contract, and of course the amounts, the due date. And what you can do to make your life easier, you can download from a contract that already has one or several charges uploaded. You can download the details. So I can export the charges from here. And I can use the extraction as a model for my template for what I want to add for several AGs, for example. So I have my download here. And I hope you can see it. I'm going to make it a bit bigger. So I have my object ID, my unit, my activation group, my contract. So these are the referential IDs. As I'm adding um, more charges, I will need to make sure that this is a unique ID. Of course, this will be existing ID. Then the name is up to me, whatever I need to put. The charge type, this is based on the master data. It's the same as the ones that you're using for the contract upload. The due date, the amount, this is something that it's based on your details, the description. You can add more information here. You have about 400 characters to write your description. And the posting status as you upload is open. You can also make changes to already created charges. If they're still open, you can change, for example, the amount or the due date is the equivalent of added. So this is also something that you can do. And of course, once the charges are created, are available in your AG, you can post them. You can reverse them if you want to, and you can do that at individual level. But of course, from the batch management in the posting batch type, you will see that we have the option to post specifically post charges. And if you select post all postings, the charges will be included. So this is another way to manage those ad hoc, non-recurring type of non-lease amounts. These will not appear in the all column schedule. However, you can see them in the consolidated transaction report, and you will be able to have details about them in the non-lease charges expense report. Any question on charges? Is any of you here using the charges or the non-lease amounts, and maybe you would like to share some details, some comments on those? All right. I'm coming back a little bit to my presentation here. We talked about the charges, so you will have the information. And the last point was on reports related to the non-lease. And as I was saying, the consolidated transaction report will give you the details of the report. In the data quality integrity, you'll have the details of the terms. And we do have a disclosure report specifically for the non-lease charges. And I would like to pointed out this report to you. I don't know if you're making use of it, but you have it available in the disclosure report portfolio, and it has the same structure as the other disclosure reports, but you have the details here. It is very similar in nature with the expense report, meaning that you will have the details by posting date, and if they're already posted, you will be able to see them. As such, if they're for the future, the system is going to consider the month-end rate to represent any charges that are in other currencies. And you can make use of this report as well. And let me go back to the application to show you where is this report. So from the main menu in the compliance report, disclosure reports, from the drop-down list, the very last report is the non-lease charges expense report. Being part of the disclosure reports. Of course, you will have to select the standard and the currency. And in order to do that, you need to have either companies that are having a currency in column, or you need to select some other filters in here. And it will be the perfect segue into our next topics, into talking about filters. And I can select here either the local or the group currency, my accounting standard, and of course my period. I did start my contract in January 1st, and I can leave it for the entire fiscal year, and I can generate it. And in the report, you will have the details for all the non-lease amounts that were introduced.